So we're in the middle of the Maimer Vata Tetzaveh, Tavshim Amalu, and we are page 359. And yesterday we explained that how do we understand the fact that every Yid has it in them inherently, not only to have faith in Hashem, but to have simple faith. Something that is so simple, it's as if it's not even a question. How could that be? How could it be that in a person who is intelligent and does everything else based on their intelligence should just have this simple faith? Where's that coming from? And the answer is there are two levels. It's not one or the other. It's not two opinions. It's two levels, one deeper than the other. So the one level is that because the Neshama Laila sees, again, the premise is that the Neshama that's in our body is just a small percentage of the Neshama that we're conscious of. Whatever I feel, whatever I'm conscious of, is a small percentage of the Neshama. And the Neshama, the primary essence of the Neshama, primary identity of the Neshama is something which we don't feel. It's something which remains in its initial spiritual level and maintains that same spiritual level as it was before. And it doesn't go down. It doesn't go down means it doesn't change. So it sees and it hears and it experiences everything that's going on. So when it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot, Shabbos, Purim, Hanukkah, whatever's going on down here, up there, we know that there's there are huge things happening. We don't see it, we don't feel it, but the Neshama L'mayla sees it, and feels it, and experiences it. So therefore, the Neshama L'mayla also sees Hashem, sees godliness. And as a result of seeing godliness by the Neshama L'mayla, the certainty of Hashem is absolute. That certainty is projected into the conscious part of the Neshama. That's where we get it from. So therefore, that's one explanation. The deeper explanation is not only because the Neshama sees God in something even deeper, the Neshama and Hashem are one. So this is referring to the essence of the Neshama. The essence of the Neshama and Hashem are one. And therefore, it doesn't even need the fact that it sees Hashem, but just because it is one with Hashem, so the emunah in Hashem is absolute, and that is projected in Hashem in the body, and we'll soon see what the difference is. So first he said, this is where we left off yesterday, that when we say the emunah comes because the neshama sees Hashem, to a certain extent, it's makif, which means it's not totally, completely internalized. It means there's something up there, which is sort of outside of my conscious body and my conscious soul. And that part of my neshama sees and feels and hears and sees godliness with absolute certainty. And that influences me. So to a certain extent, it's like something outside of myself influences me. And therefore it's makif. When we say that the neshama emunah comes from the fact that the essence is one with Hashem, that's not makif, that's my essence. So therefore, good morning, therefore the emunah is absolutely one with the person, it's inseparable. So now let's finish page 359. Page 359 in lessons in Maimorim, Vata Tetzaveh Tavshim Aleph, and we're at the bottom of the page, the paragraph which begins V'al Pizeh. V'al Pizeh yesh levar kesher inyan sheb'maymer. Based on this, we can explain the order, the sequence, the way things are found in the Maimer. Because that was one of the questions that I've asked before, that there's something not understood about the order of things. What is it? In the Kosis Lamor, first he explains the concept of Kosis Lamor, which means that through the fact that Yidden are crushed because of Golus, this brings out the higher level, their Amunah, the Vayrin Raya Mehemna. So again, page 360. Zeh Shemosh Zon Mefanis Amunah Shati B'Pnimius. So the fact that when we say Moshe Rabbeinu feeds us with Amunah, what does that mean? Every Yid has Amunah, but the Amunah that we have on our own is because the neshama sees, which is not internalized in an absolute way. Moshe Rabbeinu, he makes that Amunah become one with us. How does he do that? Because Moshe Rabbeinu connects us to the essence of the neshama. And when we connect to our essence, then our Amunah is sort of penetrates the essence. It's part of the essence. And there couldn't be anything deeper and more internal than that. Got it? Following? Okay. So that's what it means. And that is that's higher than the fact that the neshama sees. In different words, that's ma'er shalamayla ma'er. That's the difference in the beginning of the Maimon, the part that I didn't teach you, Rabbi Dubov taught you. He explains the difference between Mor and Ur. Mor means the luminary, the source of light, and Ur is the light. In the case of the neshama, the essence of the neshama is the Mor, the source of the neshama energy and the neshama light. Umashakosel kosel amor. Then it's Mavayir B'Maimon Shabagdei Lagil Amor V'Dayin the kosel Shabazman Agolos. But then he said and explains, in order to reach this, in order to bring this out, it definitely comes out in the times of Golus when Yidden are crushed. Because where do we see and when do we see the essence of the neshama being revealed? That's when a Yid's bond with Hashem is to the extent that he's ready to give up his life for Hashem. And that's mainly, we see that in the time of Golus. In other words, we need this little introduction that is going to go now into page 362. What is the difference practically, whether the Amunah comes from my essence, or the Amunah comes because there's a part of me that sees Hashem? What is the difference? So it explains the following, page 362. When Yidden have the kind of Amunah that's so strong that he's ready to give up his life, will be Iker Amunah Shemitzad Etzem and Neshama. That comes mainly from the Amunah that comes from the essence. Why? Because Amunah Mitzad Zeshu Uraya, the Amunah that comes from the fact that you see Hashem, not we, but the neshama up there sees Hashem, and therefore it's Amunah in Hashem is with absolute certainty, even though that's very strong. Hagam shi b'toik of Gadol. Ukiyadu, as it's known, there's amtus shemitzad hariyah, his amtus gedolah b'yosef. When something penetrates a person because they see it, that's something very powerful and very deep, much deeper than when you hear it. They bring in the notes here. It's based on a halacha. The halacha is that if there's a bezdin and witnesses come, even people that you really trust, let's say Moshe Rabbeinu himself comes to the bezdin to testify, then it's fine. Moshe Rabbeinu testifies, we trust him. What if the people in the bezdin, they saw with their own eyes that this person committed a sin? I think this is mainly only by issues of which are which get punishment of where the punishment by death, those kind of severe things. So the witnesses actually, they themselves with their eyes see the person doing it. I would think, wow, the bezdin, there's 3 people in bezdin, and they're observing the one person, let's say, God forbid, kills another person. So this is the best witnesses in the world. The halacha is they're disqualified. Why? Because there's a principle in reference to these issues. In other words, not monetary issues, but life and death issues. That if the Bezdin have to rule that God forbid a person might have to lose his life, there must be two options. There must be a way of thinking or an argument or a way of looking at it that the person would be guilty, and there also has to be a way of looking at the person as innocent, and the Bezdin have to rule whether he's guilty or innocent. What if it's something that the Bezdin saw? There's no room to say that he's innocent. If there's no room to say he's innocent, then you can't judge. So this is a rule in judgment. This is where the Torah judges person who we saw that actually, God forbid, he committed something that he's responsible with his life. But the Torah says when you're going to judge someone, there has to be room for two possibilities, innocent or guilty. And that's why in the Bezdin, usually there are certain rabbis that say innocent, then those that say guilty, and then we go according to the majority. But if the Bezdin actually saw it, there's no room to say that this person is innocent. And if there's no room to say innocent, then there's Bezdin disqualified. So this is the question. If Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he testified, there is room to say that he's innocent. How can I trust more than Moshe Rabbeinu? And yet the halacha is that wouldn't disqualify the Bezdin. And the answer is because when you hear something, no matter how forceful it is, no matter where it's coming from, and the most authentic person, it's still something outside of you. When you see something with your own eyes, it becomes so much part of you that it's unquestionable. There's no doubt. Anything you hear, there's still room for some sort of a doubt because it's coming to you from the outside. When you see something, there's no room for any doubt. So therefore, the Rebbe is saying, even the fact that the neshama sees godliness is also very powerful. That means that the neshama sees, and therefore it's with the absolute certainty. Nevertheless, it's still, yes.
Sorry, I have a question on that. Like nowadays, people are like when you go to the court, you know, they don't take like an eyewitness testimony. They don't trust it because it's supposedly untrustworthy. Because like your brain can like fudge what you see. So how is that like how come like
Meanwhile, you were saying that seeing is believing, that when you see something, it's absolute certainty.
yeah.
What are you saying today? You say when you see something, you don't know what you're seeing.
Yeah.
They've done studies on like 10 people in a room and they asked them what they all saw and they all give 10 different answers. Like people wearing a green striped shirt, I'm positive of it. And they're all positive. And mostly they're all wrong.
No, maybe they're colorblind.
Very true.
I don't know. According to Torah,
I feel like the soul doesn't have.
if a witness says they
issues that a
saw
brain does.
something, we trust that. I don't know. I think if somebody sees something and their brain switches it around, it's considered a mental disorder or something. I don't know. What does it mean? I saw somebody in the room, but I really didn't see him. I saw him lift his hand, but really his hand wasn't moving. I mean, I'm not familiar with what they say. I'd have to see what they say. But they're definitely not saying that we don't trust any witness. So how do they prove in court that this person, what do they do? What?
Physical evidence. Like, I don't think they really trust people's opinions.
No, if someone comes and says, I saw this person stealing this person's money.
I'll say, should take it, or was the money in their hands? And then they'll be like,
Well, that's an
yeah,
out.
it definitely was, but then there will be proof of like they never touched them.
No, so in the Bezdin, that's also true. When before Bezdin did any ruling, they interrogate the witness with a million kind of questions. What was he wearing? Where was he standing? What did you actually see? Did you actually see the act, or did you just see him holding a knife in his hand? Of course, the Bezdin also does that. They have to. It's called interrogations and investigations. It has to be 7 different kinds of things, the questions that are asked to make sure that everything the person says is consistent.
And all 3 of the witnesses, like
2 witnesses we need.
2 have to, like line up.
They have to line up, right? They question them separately to see that, and if they don't line up, finish it. Yeah. That's why the Gemara says that even though there are certain situations where a person is God forbid, deserves the death penalty, but it hardly ever happened.
Right.
And one opinion says that if it happened more than once in 7 years, that Bezdin was considered an overactive Bezdin. Another opinion says once in 70 years, because the conditions that are necessary for a person to really get that kind of punishment are so detailed and so difficult that it's hardly ever able to prove that. So what's the difference? Even though seeing is like something which becomes, it's very interesting about the difference. Right now, we know for sure that in the world out there, we see, for example, the world of advertisement, everything is visual. Everything is visual because when you see something, it has an impact on you. I remember once years ago, my grandfather wrote me a letter. I was a little boy writing a letter about how a person has to be careful what they speak and what they hear and what they see. And then he writes that regarding vision, that he says, I remember exactly what my apartment looked like 60 years ago. But if you ask me about something I heard yesterday, I'm not so sure all the details of what I heard. And it's true. You heard a class yesterday, then you can have a question. Did he say this or did he say that? But everybody would think back 20 years ago, or some of us 50 years ago, and where this was, and you look back, you can see the whole picture. Vision is something which makes a very deep impression in a person and it stays with us. So Amuna, the last line of 362, being that the Amuna comes as a result, that there's a cause for it, something outside of myself. What's the cause? Because the soul sees. That means that means it's not as a result of the essence. It's because I see something, therefore it's with absolute certainty. If that's the case, therefore it's not necessarily going to happen that this person is ready to give up his life. In other words, if something comes from outside of me, then it could be separated from me. Something very strong could pull it away. But if something is me, I can be separated from me. So when we say that a person's amuna is the strongest, what's the strongest? The strongest is that they're ready to give up their life because of amuna. That kind of strength means that the amuna is inseparable. This kind of amuna, which is inseparable, has to come from such a place, such a deep place. And some of the stories we're hearing now in Israel, especially lately, the story of the hostages, these girls who came out, and the way one girl who was keeping Shabbos and made sure not to. This is Mesiras Nefesh. Her life was already, on the line, and then she was stubborn about where they're coming from. They can only come from one place. They can come from the essence of the neshama, and somehow that opened up within her, and as a result of that, she felt that there's nothing in the world that's going to stop her. So therefore, that's the difference. So when a person has amuna so strong, to Mesiras Nefesh, it's because it comes from the essence. And therefore, he won't be able to deny Hashem, and even if it means to give up his life, that means that right now, what's sort of shining in this person is the essence of his neshama. So even a person who doesn't have Mesiras Nefesh, and God forbid does bow down to an idol, that person also has the essence of the neshama. But for whatever reason, in this case, it doesn't rise to the surface. And the other amuna, which is because I see godliness, that is something which could be detached under tremendous pressure. And this is what he's talking about. Now it continues, page 364. Good morning. We can explain what it says in the Maimer. It says Moshe Rabbeinu is the faithful shepherd. That was one meaning. The other meaning was he feeds us. He's a shepherd that feeds us faith. And what does that mean? It means he internalizes the faith. So Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that by being connected to him, he reveals in me that essence of my neshama. Not only Moshe, but this also applies to all shepherds in every generation. These words in the parentheses, the extension of Moshe is in every generation. This is a quote from the Zohar. And there's a chapter in Tanya, chapter 42, where the Alter Rebbe elaborates on this in more detail. But basically it means that just like Moshe Rabbeinu in his generation was the faithful shepherd, and the shepherd that was able to feed us faith, in every generation there are tzaddikim that their souls are an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu's soul, and they have the same function. In general tzaddikim. And then also in every generation, amongst the general tzaddikim, there's one tzaddik that is sort of in the place of Moshe Rabbeinu and has the same function as Moshe Rabbeinu. But in general, it's tzaddikim. Shehei mechaskim es haemunah di Yisrael. They're the ones that strengthen our faith. Sheyamdu b'mesiras nefesh b'kiyim ha'Torah mitzvahs. That they should stand with mesiras nefesh when it comes to the observance of Torah mitzvahs. So that means that this is what it says in Tanya also in chapter 42, that the fact that we have emunah, on one hand it's inherent, and on the other hand, who is the one that brings it out in a more open way that I should actually be more effective? That's Moshe Rabbeinu. And the more I'm connected to Moshe Rabbeinu, the more open that would be within me. Yeah.
So it said earlier about how putting in contact with Moshe Rabbeinu brings this out, but does that just affect like the whole generation, even if you haven't come in contact with Moshe? Or, like,
First of all, it affects the whole generation. It affects the whole generation. The difference will only be that the one who is more connected, sort of openly, will also feel the impact more openly.
How does it affect those people that, let's say, never would have met Moshe?
So it affects them also, but I guess it'll affect them in situations where they maybe the challenge of the test is not so difficult. When it becomes more difficult, you need something stronger. And if they don't have their open connection, it might affect that they're not going to have that strength. But Moshe Rabbeinu gives strength to everybody. He's the general neshama of the generation, so it gives an effect to the whole generation. Yeah.
So what's the difference with Mordechai who was also a teacher though, and how it became a serious nefesh? And just because they saw the food, so they couldn't.
You asking what's the difference in Mordechai?
Yeah, so in Israel and time, and they couldn't be objective because they saw it. That's the difference. That's why in Mordechai they had Mesiras Nefesh.
With Mordechai, they had Mesiras Nefesh because he was the Moshe Rabbeinu of that generation.
Yeah, but Israel didn't.
Who?
Israel and time they didn't have Mesiras Nefesh.
Right.
So how come in one generation?
Because that generation they didn't need Mesiras Nefesh.
Okay, because they saw it. But it was revealed to them.
No, because there was no challenge. What's Mesiras Nefesh? That is a force out there that's trying to force you not to believe in Hashem. In those days, there wasn't such a thing. Moshe Rabbeinu took them out of Mitzrayim. They were protected. There was no other nation that arrested people, put them into jail, tortured them, or tormented them, so they should, give up their religion. That didn't happen then. That only happened in Golus. In every building, they have emergency lights. You know what that is?
It goes out.
If all electricity fails, this light goes on, has its own little thing. But when all the lights are working, it doesn't go on. When it gets dark, that light comes out. So I guess the Amunah that we have is also like that. In normal circumstances, it doesn't come out. But when it gets dark and there's like forces challenging and aggressively trying to make me not have Amunah, that's when it comes out. That's what it means when it says crushed. Yeah.
So in a way, at the time of Yitzhak Mitzrayim, when they starts, and then it was like better because they didn't need to be crushed in order to have it, or the fact that they were crushed and have it firm caused them to have it.
No, when they went out of Mitzrayim, when he's going to explain now, when they went out of Mitzrayim, because they weren't being crushed by any kind of, there was no oppression from other countries, they went out of Golus, and now Moshe Rabbeinu is leading them. We're talking about the period after they went out of Egypt. Moshe Rabbeinu is leading them. So the other level of Amunah sufficed. You didn't need that deeper Amunah.
Best to have not, like, even when they're not being crushed, but it's a different kind of Amunah.
Right. It's a much deeper Amunah. It comes from a deeper source, but that deeper source is sort of activated when we're being crushed. It's a little bit like adrenaline. When you're being threatened, then it comes out. But in normal circumstances, it doesn't come out. So that was going to say there's a difference between Moshe Rabbeinu and the tzaddikim in the later generations, the times of Golus. Okay, we're now on the bottom of page 364. When we say Moshe feeds Yidden with Amunah, it says das belakus. In many places in Chassidus and Zohar, where it says Moshe Rabbeinu would be defined as Das. Das is the third sphera, Chochmah, Bina, Das. And what was his function? To give us Das in godliness. In other words, how did it express itself in Moshe Rabbeinu's times that our Amunah was completely internalized? The answer is because through Moshe we had Das. Now we know what is the function of Das. In fact, in davening we say, Hashem, give me Chachma, give me Bina, give me Das. But when we finish the bracha, we say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Cheinin HaDas. The main thing we ask for is the Das.
Das is like the actualization, like it's the action that we do.
It's not action, it's a part of the brain, part of the thought process. Which part of the brain is Das? We know Chochmah is understand the essence of a concept. Bina is to develop all the details and so on. What is the Das?
The bridge to connect to the emotions.
Why does Das work as a bridge?
Internalized.
What?
It's internalized.
Right. Das is the part of the brain that internalizes things, makes it penetrate. In other words, a person could be brilliant, could have amazing knowledge, vast information about something, but it won't necessarily affect him in any way if it's sort of not connected to him. I mean, the mashal that's given is to tell the story that this is a mashal that Rabbi was mentioned by Farbrengen, that there years ago in the small little villages, people were not so knowledgeable, so they used to hire someone to teach their children Torah. This person wasn't a major Torah scholar, but he knew enough to teach the children Torah. But because he was the only one that knew, therefore people looked up to him as a teacher. They asked him all sorts of questions. A lot of the people there were illiterate. So one of the villagers got a letter from home. What was the letter? He couldn't read it. So he waited for the teacher to finish teaching his class. And he said, could you do me a favor? Could you read this letter? So the letter is from his mother. And the mother is writing to him how his father was very sick. And this happened, that happened. And then she finishes off. And on this and this day, unfortunately, he passed away. The villager heard the news and he fainted. So the one who told the mashal was a mashpia in Lubavitch. His name was Rishbatz. And he said, how do you explain this? The teacher, the Malamed, is reading firsthand from the from the letter, and he doesn't faint. The villager is hearing it secondhand, and he faints. Why? So the answer is because it's not his father. Which means if he has the villager, if he has the teacher, what you just read, is that a terrible tragedy? Absolutely. Is it the worst tragedy? Absolutely. So why did you faint? Not God forbid because I think it's a tragedy, because it's not so connected to him. It's about someone else's father. Yes, everyone's tragedy should hurt you, should feel it, but it's still not the same. This person, it's his father, and therefore he fainted. What it means is you can learn about a certain subject, but it's disconnected from me. So you can have people who are brilliant in Chassidus, they study about the four worlds and Hashem and this and that, but if you look at the way they conduct themselves, you don't see the refinement, you don't see anything changed in them, because they could be studying it like a subject, but it's not really connecting to me. And even we ourselves, that we really want to change, sometimes you learn something, and it says in Chassidus, when you learn this will have an effect on you, and nothing's happening. What's going on over here? No, why doesn't it affect me? And the answer is because in order to affect someone, the knowledge has to penetrate. I guess the best word for it in English is has to register, has to really go in and sink in. Once it sinks in, then it has that effect. And that is the part of the brain called das. That's the part of the brain that makes information sink in. Chokhmah is the part of the brain that helps me perceive things one way. Bina is the part of the brain that helps me perceive things in its details another way. Das is not new information. Das is to take the information that I have and allow it to penetrate and to seek in, and then it's going to affect. So therefore, the biggest and the greatest gift that a person could have is not only just to know about Hashem and to understand Hashem on the deepest level, but that to have the das. And I think we mentioned this earlier also, that the question, why is a minor, a boy or a girl, under bas mitzvah or bar mitzvah, not obligated in mitzvahs? So it says in Gemara, because they don't have the intelligence. But we know many children that are younger than that age, and they're very intelligent, like Liron, Kenai Nahara, and they are more intelligent than some adults. So the answer is you'll never find the Gemara say, I think so, you'll never find the Gemara say that a minor has no chachma, or a minor has no bina. It always says, Katan ein lo das. A minor doesn't have das. That means this part of the brain that allows things to really penetrate and sink in, that develops at bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah. And therefore, you can't hold him responsible, because even though he goes to class, he has teachers, he knows the information, this is allowed, this is not allowed, but it doesn't penetrate until that part of the brain opens up. And that's the part of the brain, which is das. So that's what it means that Moshe Rabbeinu internalized our emunah. He gave us das. He opened up the das in our minds, that when we learn about Hashem, it should penetrate in the deepest ways. So the emunah is not just external, but it's internal. But Moshe Rabbeinu's times, he didn't bring us to the point of Mesiras Nefesh, because it wasn't necessary in those days. So when we say he internalized it, it was in this way. But in the time of Galus, in the later generations, the leaders of the Jewish people, the shepherds, they brought us to have emunah in an internalized way, and to have Mesiras Nefesh. That was in the later generation. So it's an interesting thing. Moshe Rabbeinu is really the source, but in his generation, what he brought out was the lower level of emunah. And the later generations, all the shepherds of Israel that followed Moshe, they brought out the higher level of emunah, because that was necessary in the time of Galus. Got it? I just want to say once again, thank you to all those that are working on the campaign. We see the results on the screen, Baruch Hashem, moving up. Should keep moving higher and higher. Thank you very, very much. And just keep thinking of people you can contact and what you can do. This is our once a year push to bring it as much as we can. So again, Yasher Koyach. I know it's not so easy, but it's 2-3 days, and hopefully after that we'll have smooth sailing. Okay. To be continued.
Robert, do you have any stories from your fundraiser in the past where like amazing things happen or something funny happened?
Amazing stories of fundraising in the past. Yeah, you call up somebody for $18 and they say, okay, I'll give you $1,800.
You have that person's phone number?
Or you call for $1,800 and say, I'll give $18,000. Now, I actually had somebody who once I called him, very wealthy man, very generous. Probably one of the only times that ever happened to me. And he said he was going to give $40,000.
Wow.
Then he calls me up 10 minutes later. Make that $50,000.
What did you say to convince him?
Nothing. His Etzem and Neshama came to the surface.
We want to record this video, basically a video that's like very popular on Instagram where the lots of Chabad houses have also done it, where it's where the teacher faces forward and then all the students are behind, so you can't see the students, but you hear their voice and they say, "Hi, Rabbi,"
One at a time.
like one at a time, and you
Oh.
say like, and you say their name.
You have to think of who is talking without seeing them.
Yeah, so can we do that at break? They've done it at Chabad houses. They're like Chabad on campus. They're like, "Hi, Rabbi," and they're like, "Oh,
He's still recovering.
oh, fair
I think it's.
Oh, well, we can say that as a disclaimer. If I don't recognize someone's name, I'm still recovering. Okay.
enough."